It's Ray. Welcome back to my channel and to another weekly vlog. I am teaching from home for this 1 week. It's the week after the Easter holidays, and so I thought I'd vlog this week because I really struggle to vlog when I'm actually in school, but when I'm at home it seems kind of manageable. I am currently still trying to work through my Goodreads currently reading list. I watched a video that Kate Howe did of a spring clean reading plan, and so I'm kind of doing a bit of a spring clean reading this week in terms of finishing off a few things that are on my currently reading. But on reflection, I have realised that I actually don't need to read very many more of them before I'm in a place where I'm kind of happy with what I'm reading. So I'll put up what my currently reading list is right now. Okay, so we have Diamond by Jacqueline Wilson. This is the 4th book in the Hetty Feather series that I'm working through. I kind of feel like I owe it to myself to finish the series. I'm not wild about it. If you watched any of my recent videos, you'll know that I was a bit disappointed with the way that the series has gone, especially the fact that this Diamond book is told from the perspective of Diamond and not of Hetty anymore. It kind of, you know what it kind of reminds me of? Although I haven't really read any of it, it feels a bit like a fan fiction, except written by the author about her own book, in that it's kind of like taking a spin-off character from the series and giving her a voice. And also, as the plot goes on, I feel like there's a few kind of throwbacks to things that happened in the earlier books, which I just sort of gratify the reader, and I just put in there for that and not much else. I am enjoying it though as a listen in the background read. It's very easy, it's very light, it's quite funny. Entertaining, but it feels quite kiddie in a way that I didn't feel like Hetty Feather did. And so yeah, that's like a totally alright book. I think I have about 50 minutes left to go. I've been listening to a bit of that while I was working today, so that's going to be finished pretty soon. The second book on my list, this is like quite an embarrassing currently reading list. I don't really know how it's turned into this. I guess this is what happens when you make your reading public. You kind of become aware of the stuff you actually do read. The second book on my list is Getting Things Done. This is like the cringiest, most self-help-y cover that you could ever have. This is a reread. I read this book a few years ago and it was quite impactful at the time that I read it. I was like super stressed with work. I just felt completely overwhelmed, and I think the reason I love this book so much is that it like validated my love of writing lists, because the argument of the book is basically just like make a list of your whole life, which very much appeals to me. Rereading it now, there's a little bit of nostalgia there for me, but at the same time, from a more objective perspective, I feel like it's so badly written, and I feel like the idea in this book could be summarized, and in fact is summarized very effectively into numerous little like YouTube 5-minute videos. So if you're interested about the concept of getting things done, then just go watch one of those videos. Don't read the whole book. But yeah, I don't know, I'm finding it still weirdly quite nice. I was in quite a like spring clean, sort your life out kind of mood, and it's been quite useful for that. Quite a few prompts that have just made me think like, oh yeah, I ought to organize that. But again, that I'm hoping to finish pretty soon. Next on the list, this is one that I'm not worried about taking off because it's a year-long read, a poem for every night of the year. I've literally been trying to do so much filming today, and there's just always been background noise, and so I've waited. It's like 5:30 p.m. and there's hardly any light left, and now someone's mowing the lawn and it's really noisy. Anyway, this is one that I got for Christmas. I just can't get over the cover. It's the most beautiful cover that you've ever seen. And this went along with my resolution to read more poetry this year, and I must say I kind of fell behind a bit. I like read a poem every night of the year for the first 3 weeks of the year or so, and then just gradually kind of forgot and then got behind and didn't catch up. But my mum asked for it for her birthday, which was in March, because she really liked the idea of reading the same poem as me, even though we're living in different countries, so that we have something that we're kind of doing together at the same time every night, and then we like send each other messages if there was one that we particularly liked, or a quote that we found particularly beautiful from it, which was such a nice idea. And so since then I have been back on it with reading a poem every night of the year, and I'm also just like dedicating a bit more time to it to go back and read the ones that I didn't read from January, so that by the end of the year I will actually have read all the poems. It's a lovely collection. A lot of the poems are children's poems, which I didn't realise when I first got it. I think I'd really love an anthology like this, which is more exclusively for adults poetry, but I am really enjoying it. In fact, there was a nonsense poem the other day by Lewis Carroll. Who else? Not the Jabberwock, although that was also in here. This one's called The Mad Gardener's Song, and I just loved it. I just found it so entertaining. It's just like so ridiculously nonsense and wonderful. It's like the first couple of verses are, he thought he saw an elephant that practiced on a fife. He looked again and found it was a letter from his wife. At length I realised, he said, the bitterness of life. He thought he saw a buffalo upon the chimney piece. He looked again and found it was his sister's husband's niece. Unless you leave this house, he said, I'll send for the police. Children's poetry sometimes is really just wonderful. So I'm very much enjoying this, and I'm enjoying dedicating a bit more time to catching up. And I'm really, really glad I've got a kind of accidental accountability partner in my mum to mean that when I go to sleep, I actually do pick this book up and read one poem before I fall asleep. So I'm enjoying that, but obviously that doesn't need to be kind of scrubbed off my currently reading list because I'm going to be reading this for the whole year. Next up, this is one that I need to finish, and I need to work out how to finish it. This is Persuasion by Jane Austen, which I was listening to the audiobook of, but I haven't really been following the story that well by listening to it as an audiobook, and I want to read it in the text. I've decided I think that I will just pay way better attention to it if I read it actually in the text. And so I've got Kindle Unlimited's, like one of those 3-month cheap trial things that they do from time to time, which is about to run out, and I got Persuasion on Kindle Unlimited to take away with me on holiday, and the text is so phenomenally bad, it's literally unreadable. Listen to this is how it starts. I don't know how Persuasion really starts, but it's 100% definitely not like this. Sir Walter Elliot of Kelnich Hall in Somersetshire was a person who, for his very own amusement, by no means took up any e-book, however the baronetage. There he determined profession for an idle hour, and consolation in a distressed one. There his colleges had been roused into admiration and recognised by considering the restricted remnant of their earliest patents. There any unwelcome sensations springing up from domestic affairs modified naturally into pity and contempt as he grew to become over the nearly infinite creations of the final century. And there, if each other leaf was powerless, he should study his own records with an interest which by no means failed. This was the page at which the fave extent constantly opened. Like, how has that got through any sort of system that allowed it to be purchasable on the internet? I mean, it was free, obviously, because it was Kindle Unlimited, but I'm currently feeling really not a fan of Kindle Unlimited. I wish that I hadn't got the 3 months of cheapness, because I also got on Kindle Unlimited Do Not Say We Have Nothing, which I read back in January, and when I read it in January I said it could well be the best book I read all year, and now we're in April and it's still standing as the best book that I've read all year. But I took loads and loads of notes on it, and I want to keep those notes, but obviously I got it out as like kind of accidentally as a library book, and so I'm going to lose all of the notes when my free trial ends, which sucks. So yeah, I think in future I'm just going to buy the books. Sometimes I really miss being in the UK and just purchasing books as real hard copy books. Living in Congo, I'm reading so much more on my Kindle than normal, and I do find the Kindle so useful. Like, it definitely has a role, but there's something so nice about just owning a book, and you have it and it's on your shelves and no one can take it away from you, and you can make your annotations and you're never going to accidentally lose them. And if you had a library book, you wouldn't annotate it because it's a library book, but I don't know, it feels like with Kindle it's easy to forget that you've got a book out on Kindle Unlimited rather than on normal book. So I need to sit down and try and like write up my notes from that soon, but also at some point I'm just going to buy a hard copy of it to have for myself. I have like quite a long list of books from the last few years that I enjoyed so much, but either read as like a borrowed book, a library book, or on Kindle, and I really want to own the hard copy of. Unfortunately, I'm already out of shelf space, and after this house we will definitely be moving somewhere that's like 1/10 of the size, and so I probably shouldn't buy too many more books. But yeah, anyway, that's Persuasion. I need to get a different version of it on Kindle so that I can actually read and finish that. And the two books that are kind of lingering at the bottom of my currently reading list, like take out Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire in French. That's just like my background when I want to read something in French, read that there's no deadline for me to finish in my head, and when I finish it I'll just immediately start the next book in French. So that's kind of permanently going to be on my currently reading list. Both Titus Groan and The Grapes of Wrath are books that I'm really excited to read, but for no good reason in particular started reading, didn't get very far into, and haven't carried on reading. And it's now been so long since I really read a chunk of either of them that I think I'm just going to go back to the beginning with each of them and read them from the beginning to get back into the story, because I didn't get super far through either of them, and both of them I started reading like 6 months ago. So yeah, that is where I am up to in my reading this week. So I guess there's a couple of things that I need to get through. Diamond I'll finish pretty much immediately. I've actually already sneakily started my next background listen audiobook, which is called The Kashmir Shawl by Rosie. It's like a women's commercial fiction book. I don't read that genre very much at all, but I'm trying to read a few more of them, especially as an audiobook, as like a nice something to listen to in the background while I'm doing other stuff type read, because now that I'm reading more than I used to, I find that I'm craving more occasionally having a proper like switch off book, and this is that. It's quite a simple plot line, but I'm optimistic about where it's going to go. Basically, there's a young woman, after her father's died, they're packing up the stuff in the house, and she discovers this beautiful cashmere shawl which belonged to her grandmother, who went out to India in the late 1930s as the wife of a missionary. It's like 1939, and the story's just started doing that dual plot thing, so we've had it in the present day for the first 3 chapters with Myra, I think she's called, the girl who's just gone out to India to see if she can find out more about her grandmother's shawl, and now we've just gone back to 1939 to the grandmother's voice, as she is a young woman living in rural India as a missionary's wife just as World War II is starting, which is a very promising time period for this to be an exciting and gripping story. So that's another book that I'm listening to. Then see if I can finish off Persuasion and Getting Things Done. That will probably be my full reading for this week, but maybe I'll start something new. I'll see how I feel later on in the week. I'm at the end of my first working day today. Monday went pretty nicely. This evening I'm just going to do some video editing and sorting, I think, because I have quite a lot of footage from my holiday that I need to organise a bit and start sorting out into videos. So I'm going to do that this evening, and also a bit of reading, probably getting things done alongside getting some stuff done, which is kind of how I'm using that book. So catch up with you later on in the week. Hey, it's Saturday. It's been a nice, quiet working week from home, and I thought I'd just sit down and update you on the books that I've been reading this week. I'll start off with my hard copy books that I'm reading. Poem for every night of the year. I have been getting through more than one poem a night, so gradually catching up with that. Still enjoying it. No new favourites in particular, but it's nice to wind down the day with a few poems, so that's been nice, and I'm glad that I'm back in the habit of reading this properly. Then we have Getting Things Done. I have nearly got this done. Like I mentioned before, this is really wordy for what it is, and I've been using it to practice my speed reading because I'm quite a slow reader, and normally I don't want to try and practice speeding up my reading on things that I'm really enjoying, but with this it's kind of turned into a case of I just want to get through to the end so that I finished it. So I've been practicing like using a bookmark and sliding it down the page and trying to not sub-vocalize as I'm reading it, so not like saying the words out loud in my head. And so it's been quite useful for that. It has also been useful in just putting me in the headspace of being productive and getting things done, and it's been nice because it's been a quieter week at work. For example, I've managed to get my inbox down to inbox 0 and stuff like that, so it's been quite a good companion read. I am really amazed at how much less I think of it now than I did the first time around that I read it, but still weirdly kind of a bit nostalgic, and so that's been fine, and I'm glad that I've basically done with that, so I will be able to tick it off the list, and my spring clean reading is actually polishing up really nicely. Then the thing that I kind of had on my Kindle was Persuasion, which, as I showed you, was just completely unreadable on Kindle, so I have not been reading any more of that. I have listened to a little bit more of the audiobook of it, which is how I was consuming it the first time round, but I've kind of just listened to it so sporadically on audiobook and also while I'm doing other things that I wasn't giving it my full attention, and I think I want to just restart it, reading it obviously in an actual edition that makes sense. So I think I'll probably buy that on Kindle and maybe read that next week, or I might start that once I've finished getting things done. I have been enjoying the bits of it that I've been listening to. I feel like I might be finally getting into Jane Austen, which I'm excited about, so I want to give it a proper shot. I'm really fond of the protagonist, Anne, in it. I think she's the same age as me, and she's probably quite a similar personality type to me, and so I find her really relatable. The writing is excellent. I'm so happy that I'm enjoying it, so I want to properly enjoy it and actually sit down and read it. Then the other audiobooks, I have finished 2 this week, both the ones I was listening to. The first one was obviously Diamond by Jacqueline Wilson. I enjoyed this in the end. It was a nice light listen, quite like the way that the book finished. The thing that kind of confuses me about it is that it felt just like it was aimed at such a younger audience than Hetty Feather, which, considering that it's kind of in the same series, feels a bit weird. Like, I would want to give this to possibly a younger child than I would want to give Hetty to, and yet children aren't likely to get around to it until they've already read the first 3 Hetty Feather books. I mean, it could work as a standalone book, but it kind of feels a bit weird reading the 4th book in a series as a standalone book. So I'm not quite sure why she's done that. I feel it would almost be better if this book were written, but just like with no link to Hetty at all, and were just written as a standalone book in and of itself, with another girl taking Hetty's kind of role in it. But yeah, overall I enjoyed it, and when I get my next Audible credit, I think I will finish off the last book in the Hetty Feather series. I kind of feel like I owe it to myself to get to the end, but it was a good background listen. I enjoyed that. And then the second book that I listened to this week was called The Kashmir Shawl by Rosie Thomas, and this was another wonderful listen to in the background kind of listen, like a light read but enjoyable, gripping plot. I haven't read a book like this for so long. It's the kind of book that I used to read when I was maybe about 14, 15, and then just kind of haven't read for a very long time, and I was just absolutely in the mood for it. What I particularly loved about it was that it was really unapologetically female focused, and I feel like I've read a lot of books lately which have been super male focused, and some of them haven't even had a female character in them, and it was so nice to read something that was kind of the total opposite of that, and the men were the side characters, and the focus was purely on the women and their friendships and their relationships. So The Kashmir Shawl was a dual narrative story. It started off with Mare, who was tracing the history of her grandmother after having found this beautiful Kashmiri shawl in her parents' house after her father died. And then it also tells the story of said grandmother, Nerys, and her time living as a missionary's wife in Kashmir during the Second World War. It just follows these 2 women, their relationships, their friendships, the challenges that they face in a really nice, well-paced, enjoyable way. I haven't started another audiobook yet, but the next one that I'm going to read is The Yellow Bird Sings by Jennifer Rosner. I do not know much about this at all, but my fiance's mum just sent me a message saying that she'd just listened to it and couldn't put it down. It was brilliant, and Audible had a sale on, so I've just bought that. I believe it is the story of a Polish lady and her 5-year-old daughter during World War II, so it sounds like it will be a much more harrowing experience of World War II than The Kashmir Shawl, which was a very light read for a book set in the war. But I'm really looking forward to that, so I will start that today, which means that when I've finished getting things done, I will be in a normal human situation of having an audiobook on the go and a book, i.e. Persuasion, on the go on my Kindle, and a poetry book on the side, and that is pretty much it. So I'm excited to be back to a normal reading life, having spring cleaned my currently reading this week.
Yesterday, there was sun and there was rain. Beauty in the
Hi, it's Sunday evening. I probably should have rounded this vlog off yesterday because there's not very much to update you on today. I have finally finished getting things done, which was quite an ironic day to finish it on because I have not really got anything done today, and my thoughts on it remain exactly the same as yesterday. I literally cannot believe it's so long for what it talks about. I can't really understand why I thought it was such a great book when I read it before, as particularly towards the end. It feels like he just dedicates chapters to talking about how great he is and how great his idea about getting things done is, and yeah, not very brilliant. It's been a bit of a flop day, but we did have a really nice online Zoom brunch with some friends and played some games, got the weekly shopping done, and saved the day by going on a really lovely walk around sunset and seeing the sunset over the Congo River from a new location that we discovered, this kind of boardwalk out where you can go right out actually onto the river. So that was a super nice way to end an otherwise pretty uneventful day. I'm back to work with the children next week, so just kind of psyching myself up for that. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a lovely week. Thank you very much for watching.
Beyond gravel, beyond